Hey everybody, this is the Lautie X-Lock, part of their Spy Wars series. There's a few other toys that have Spy Wars on them that Lautie makes. I had this for a long time and didn't realize I never reviewed it or took it apart or discussed it once until just yesterday when I saw Saun over at Fidget Fix do a video on the HiFiBoy, which is very similar to this. So stick around, we're going to talk about both. Okay, so real quick, like I said, I did watch Saun's video yesterday about the other model, and here is a screenshot of what that video looks like. I'm going to put a link in the description and in the comments. I'll pin that in the comments, a link to his video, because I think it's important you watch both of these videos if you're going to buy one to make a decision. So go over there and check out Saun's work. He's doing really good work, and he has a great studio. We're both, I think we're both the same age. He's in Canada, I'm in Pennsylvania, and he's doing interviews and everything. You know, that's something else I need to do, is acknowledge the fellow reviewers out there. I'm just going to do, I think the next video I do is just to sort of point out everybody that I watch and learn from, and maybe you aren't aware of who they are yet, and maybe I can turn you on to some good people that are out there. So if you were going to buy one of these, let's just do this. We'll get this out of the way in the beginning. What do I think of it? Do I use it much? Well, I've had it for a long time, and no, I don't use it that much. I find it mechanically interesting. I like the design. It's very pleasing. It's a little loud. It's heavy in the pocket. That's probably the main reason I don't do too much with it. Other than that, it clicks once in each direction. It has some interesting features in it that we see on other more modern haptics that I didn't realize, because this has been out for a while, and they're using some we could say advanced technology with the reversed magnets in there to help it jump to the next location. At least this would have been one of the early versions of that, and I wasn't even aware of that. So it does what I'm showing you here, and if you watch Saun's video, it's just like he said, you sort of hold it like a syringe. There are other ways to use it, but that's the typical way. And yeah, I've kind of not been too interested in it. The other one that Saun looked at, the HiFiBoy by Wanwu, is more modular. The magnets are modular. These magnets are not modular. They're permanently placed everywhere. And there's something I'd like to try with things with this that I cannot do because they're not modular. On his, on the HiFiBoy, you would be able to try things that we'll talk about when I take this apart. So it is a little bit less bulky than the HiFiBoy in your hand probably, but it's basically the same principle, same design concept. In fact, I'm surprised people in the Lautie camp didn't lose their minds whenever the HiFiBoy came out saying clone, clone, clone. I don't like the word clone because it's used too inaccurately. There's no way you would confuse this with the Wanwu HiFiBoy. They do not look exactly alike in any way. You cannot say they look exactly alike, and that's what a clone is. It cannot be distinguished from the original. That's it. End of story. Other than that, it's a copy. So you could say it's a copy, but there's different. What I would say is different enough. The Wanwu is different enough from the X-Lock that it is certainly worthy of its existence and should not be criticized as a copy. So, get too philosophical. I'm getting too philosophical here, but without borrowing ideas, not that they borrowed, but they are very similar in design, but they don't do the same. They can't both do the same thing. There's advancements that were made in the Wanwu that just aren't here. So we have to be a little tolerant of what someone might jump and say, that's a copy. that's a copy, that's a clone. Is it? Or is it different enough? You know? So, let's go ahead and measure it. With the old calipers, in the closed position, we have 60 millimeters. In the open position, we have 77, 78. Its width, which will be the same in both directions, is about 19. In other words, it's the same here, 19, 18. Thickness of this is just under 10 millimeters. Oh, I don't know why you would want to know this, but that's about 42. Yeah. Let's see how much it weighs. About 78 grams. So, I would say, you know, if you're looking for a small form factor, if you compare this with the Wanwu HiFiBoy, this is going to be smaller, a little less heavy, maybe a little easier to carry in your pocket. Basically does the same thing, but does not have the modularity features that the Wanwu HiFiBoy does. So, that's about all I have to say about it. From this point, I think we're going to go ahead and take it apart. Actually, no, we're not going to take it apart yet because I have some things out here to compare it with. Didn't do that. So the one thing I always pick to compare everything with is the CP3 by Mackie. Everybody either has one or a copy, which is the same size. So here you go. About the same whenever you extend them. Here we have the S Nano by Ant Design, a relatively new piece to me, and that is using the same magnetic concept where you have 3 magnets in here, and the middle one is pointing in the opposite direction. Just like on this, you have a big magnet, small magnet, big magnet, small magnet, big magnet. It goes on. The small magnets are pointing in the opposite direction, so you get a nice jump between stops. My gripe would be that, same with the S Nano and this, is these are not modular. I would like to know what it's like to have all these magnets pointing in the same direction, because then theoretically you would get, instead of 4 clicks, you'd get, let's see, 8, I guess. 1, 2, well, what would it be? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, yeah, it should be 8 clicks. Because if they're all attracted in the same direction, you should get 4 smaller clicks that way and 4 smaller clicks that way. Well, I wanted to do the same sort of thing with this, but I can't because the magnets are permanently glued in. It would be nice to see what it's like for it to go, instead of just being 2 clicks. What if it went that halfway and clicked and stopped, and then went the rest of the way? So you got 4 clicks out of this thing instead of just 2. I think that could have been perfectly doable. And on the Wanwu HiFiBoy, you could take it apart, line up those magnets in there the way I'm talking about, and see if it works. So I'd like to see how that works, Mr. Saun at Fidget Fix. I'd like to see how that works. So similarly, this is another one that uses the magnets in a opposing way in the middle to get a better jump, and that's the Pod version 1 from 01 EDC. Not that any of you have that to compare it to, but it's fairly small. You know what this reminded me of when I was looking for things to compare it to was the Pogo by Axiom, which is really meant to be a, you know, I think it was, its design intent was to be a knuckle roller. Now I have mine set up differently. There's magnets on the inside. When you buy it, they're loose, and you can flip them around so that it either opposes or attracts. Now I made mine, I went ahead and glued mine in, and I did a video about it. So I'm not a knuckle roller, but once you set it up like this, it attracts, and it becomes an awesome haptic. Absolutely awesome. And he hasn't made any more since. He's done these in stainless steel, titanium, zirconium, copper. Did a whole bunch. This is stainless. But yeah, that's what it reminds me of, kind of, except it doesn't have the spring back motion. It's something you hold in your hand. Well, we hold all these in our hands, don't we? What else do you hold them with? Uh-oh. Yeah, that's it. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the disassembly part, and we'll get into talking about the details and the differences between this and the Wanwu. So I was thinking, I take little breaks between these segments, and I do these recordings in segments. That way I can come back if I make a mistake and start from a reasonable spot instead of having to start over again. And just talking about copies and clones and stuff, I know it can get pretty deep with that, depending on what you're talking about. But this is another good example. When this came out, this came first, this came second. And I did the video on this one reluctantly, because I don't like to cover copies. And at the time, I considered this a copy. But the fact is, they're very different. And aside from being the same shape, the mechanics are different. Everything about them is different. So, you know, I think this is going to open up a little bit more of a category for me here. We'll call it different enough. You know, things that may be considered a copy by some people, and I don't think they should be. More like an advancement, an improvement in the design, a change. You get the idea. So let's get back to this thing. So finally, we're going to take this thing apart. And I believe it is a T6. T6 Torx is all you need. This has a lot less parts than the Wanwu HiFiBoy. So you really don't have to worry about anything. There's a screw on either side. Both sides are the same. We'll take the whole thing apart. There's one little trick you can do with this by assembling it differently than it's assembled now, but I'm not sure if it would be interesting to anybody or not. We'll try it, and you'll get to see what that is here towards the end. But now that that screw's out, now you can take everything apart. Unlike if you've watched Saun's video again on the Wanwu, the magnet that sits in here is loose. But on mine, these are all glued in, so that's not going to come apart. What does happen when you pull it apart is this little pin comes out. You just don't want to lose that. It doesn't come springing out or flying out anywhere, but it does come out. It sits down in this. It sits down in that hole, and that lines up with the grooves. Let me get this in focus here. So it's got those two grooves, and those line up with this little pin that just slips loosely through both sides. When it's in place, it just sticks out the same on both ends, and it lines up with that groove, and that just keeps everything in alignment. See, the other screw up here would keep it from swiveling like this. So you can take it apart, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. There's a little bit of Loctite, I believe, some kind of Loctite on these screws. They have a bit of a whiteness to them. Just leave that on there. Don't try to clean that off because it'll help keep them in. These do take a lot of abuse as far as vibration, because these screw heads actually absorb the impact when it comes back, forward and backward. So there's the other pin. Here's the middle piece. That's all it is. Now on the Wanwu version, the magnet here, I believe it comes loose. It can be flipped around if you wanted to, and the magnets that are in here are sort of resting in loose little blind holes and covered with a little thin little sheet of metal. So you can actually take it apart, and if you wanted to, you could put them all in the same polarity and put it back together. And that's what I'd like to see. And I'd like to see if that gives you what I assume would be 4 clicks instead of 2 clicks. But you see, if you put it in the correct way, what it does is it jumps back, and for this magnet here, it jumps back and forth between these two, and it sort of skips over the middle one because it's pushing in the opposite direction. Now, if you flip this over, if you flip this piece over, and you'd know it right away when you try to reassemble it. When you try to put it together, all of a sudden it's funky. It doesn't want to go in there right. But you can put it back together that way, and then what you end up with is something that's a little springy. Where'd this go? Like the pogo. Again, you should go look at if this interests you at all, even as a finger roller. You should go look at the video I did on this, how to modify it to do what it's doing now. When you buy it, it won't attract like this. You have to glue the magnets in to make it do that. That doesn't ruin anything, because all I have to do is unscrew these ends and flip them around, and then it goes from attracting to opposing, and then it wants to stay out in this full length. And if you push on it, it's springy. So that was sort of an introduction to where we're headed with this. When we put this back together, we're going to, rather than put it together correctly where it wants to seat the whole way down, we're going to go ahead and put it together a little bit wonky. And so I guess we're at that point. We may as well just put it back together at this point. There's nothing else to take apart. So I've got that loose pin in there, and I just want to bring it down in here, line it up. Now it's together, except it's together the way it's supposed to be, and I want to do it differently. I want to flip this over, flip that over, and do this again. And yeah, you see, if you did it wrong, you'd know right away, because something's off. But we got that side done. Let's go ahead and put some screws in. Where are we at? Oh, crying. There we go. Okay. Go ahead and put it all back together. I could just put one screw on each side, but this is so quick. We'll just go ahead and put her back together. So again, you take this loose pin, put it back in here, keep it from slide right through if you don't hold it in place. Now let's see which way we want to have this. Is it going the right direction that I want it to? Yeah, good. Okay. So now all we got to do is put the screw back in. Okay, so now we've put it back together in an unusual configuration, and it's springy. That might actually be a fun way to carry it, at least for something different. I might try it like that for a day. I like that. There's a slight, you can even hear it maybe, there's a slight difference between the time of impact here and here. One of them is making contact before the other. So it's not one click, it's two. See if you can hear. There. Yeah, that's neat. Okay, so that, I think, is it. Let me know your thoughts, comments, questions in the comments, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks for watching. Bye.